Hey, welcome to Brighter Rays. This week we're looking at a study called Greeting Them from Afar. And we're looking at Genesis 23, 1 through 20. Now, this is our last look at Abraham. He's going to be still alive, but really the shift of the next couple of stories in the Bible goes to Isaac. So we've seen a lot of the blessings of Abraham, seen a lot that God has done for him. We've seen him walk by faith, not by sight. And his faith in his God has grown. I mean, you can see it. He's learned that God is the God of blessings. He is Yahweh El Olam. He is the everlasting God. And he is Jehovah Jireh, the provider. We find the death of Abraham finally in chapter 25. But after the death of Sarah, which we're looking at this time, we see the focus of the whole narrative really turns to Isaac. So God has tested Abraham's faith, strengthening it, making it shine, and now he is ready to run the last leg of his race. In the story today, we're going to find some things that are familiar to us, and we're going to find some things that are going to make our heads scratch. In this study this week, you're going to be like, I don't know what is he talking about? Why is he doing this? Some of it's cultural stuff, some of the stuff's going on, how you act during then. So we know the familiar scene of a loved one passing away, of mourning the loss of someone that you love. So we know that kind of scene, that makes sense to us. And we know from experience, we know how to sympathize with Abraham. We know the tough job of arranging a funeral and making those kinds of arrangements to bury your loved one. We understand that. Some have experienced that this year and know too well what Abraham is going through. And some of us will experience that this year. So that part of the story is not very far from most of us. The story is a reminder that if the Lord does not return in our lifetime, death comes to us all. As Spurgeon once said, the young may die, the old must die. So the story is also one of promises and perseverance. One of the main themes that I have tried to emphasize throughout the study of Genesis is the promises of God. It started really in Genesis chapter 3 and will continue unbroken through to the end of the book of Revelation. The promises have been given, and now we watch them unfold. More than just watching them in the Word, we strive to make them our own. We want the promises to be ours, too. A.W. Pink once said, "The bee would not extract honey from the flowers as long as he only gazed upon them." So we can't just look at the promises, we have to go after them. This is perseverance, right? This is the keep on going, the not stopping. Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're all given to us as those who persevered to the end. They heard the promises. They listened to what God had said. They saw them, but they greeted them from afar. So, even though they did this, it didn't stop them from running the race of faith. Even though they didn't obtain all the promises, they didn't get everything that God had promised, they still obtained the promises. They still had the promises. They were getting parts of the promises fulfilled, and a lot more would come to subsequent generations. And really a lot of the promises were fulfilled even in their own deaths. So today's passage we begin to look at really divides down into 5 nice little parts. So we're going to look at that in 5 parts. And verse 1 through 2 describes the death of Sarah, and we'll consider the passing of an example. She was an example to us all. She is used as an example in the New Testament, and so we'll look at that. In verses 3 through 6, we find Abraham, a man who has lived decades and decades in the land, but still is a sojourner and a foreigner. He's lived there for a long time, but he's not a resident of Canaan. So we'll kind of look at that. And then we'll see in verses 7 through 11, we find the Hittites, or the Hethites, depending on your translation, willing to give Abraham a cave or a burial place. But then in verses 12 through 16, Abraham insists on weighing out the silver. He wants to pay for it. He wants to buy the land. He doesn't want them to just give it to him. He wants to buy the land. And finally, in verses 17 through 20, we're going to consider Abraham's possession, that he finally has a possession in Canaan. And what does that mean? What does that mean? So join us next time, and we'll start looking at the very beginning of this chapter, and we'll look at verses 1 through 2, and the passing of an example.